Welcome to the first lesson, everyone. Today we're going to be covering the idea of moles and molar mass. So let's get right to it. What is the idea of a mole? A mole is simply going to be a number. It is some numerical value. So when we think of the word dozen refers to having 12 of something. Oftentimes dozen refers to like donuts or whatever, right? The idea of a mole refers to specific concepts in chemistry. A mole can refer to atoms, formula units, molecules, and so forth. The actual value of the mole is 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. And this is known as Avogadro's number. So what is the purpose of a mole? A mole serves to bridge the gap between counting things and weighing things and make it more reasonable for us to actually apply our chemical knowledge. One atom. Let's talk about one carbon atom. So one carbon atom is going to have a certain weight of X. This amount is measured in atomic mass units. We'll go into that more shortly. Then 1 mole of carbon is going to have a certain weight, but we don't need to measure it in atomic mass units anymore. We can measure it in grams now, because more than likely this value is an actual tangible thing that you can do in a simple laboratory. As it happens, these values are going to be identical. The only difference for the number is that instead of measuring in atomic mass units, we're now measuring in grams. So then, what is an atomic mass unit? One atomic mass unit is going to be 1/12 the mass of one carbon 12 atom. In order to fully understand this, we're going to have to make a quick side note. So the atom, we should all know, has a nucleus and then electrons somewhere outside that nucleus. The nucleus consists of protons and neutrons. The weight of one electron is insignificant in relation to the weight of one proton. So the majority of the mass comes from the weight of the nucleus. This value of 12 is going to be the sum of the number of protons plus the number of neutrons in the nucleus. So given that, one atomic mass unit is going to be 1/12 the mass of one C12 atom. And this C12 atom is the atom that specifically has 12 as the value for the sum of protons and its neutrons. And that 12 value is going to determine the majority of the mass. Speaking of mass and weight, there are 4 values that tend to be very similar for terms that are topics for confusion. And these terms are going to be your atomic weight, then your average atomic mass. So let's start with defining these two. Average atomic mass, your atomic mass, and now you can see where things definitely start getting quite confusing. And then the mass number. Atomic weight and average atomic mass. These two are identical. They mean the exact same thing. Given that, you can infer that this weight term, what it really means is it is an arithmetic average. So it is a weighted average value found by the relative abundance. So relative abundance meaning different versions of any one given atom. When we're talking about different versions, there's different things we can do to one specific atom to change it while still making it carbon. If we had carbon, for instance, you could change the number of neutrons, you can change the number of electrons, and it's still carbon. Once you change the number of protons, different element, but more on that later. The point is that these two terms means the weighted average value of all the different versions of carbon. Now, atomic mass. Atomic mass is the exact weight, so the exact mass of any one atom. If you had a scale that could somehow measure like single atoms on its own, you put one carbon atom on the scale, the number that comes out is going to be the atomic mass of that atom. Most of it does come from protons and neutrons. Some mass comes from other places, but the vast majority of it comes from protons and neutrons. That being said, we have this idea of a mass number, which is going to be equal to the number of protons plus the number of neutrons in any one given element. This value over here, that 12, is going to be known as your mass number. Lastly, we're going to have the idea of a molar mass. So, what is a molar mass? Earlier, we were talking about a carbon and how if you had one atom of carbon, it's going to have a certain weight, X weight in AMU. And then 1 mole of carbon has a certain weight, X weight in grams. Well, this value is actually going to be around 12.01 grams. For how much carbon are we weighing right now? 1 mole of carbon. As it turns out, this idea is just your molar mass. So if we were to give a more formal definition to this, molar mass would be the weight of 1 mole of some compound. It can be an atom, it can be a mole, no, it can be an atom, a molecule, formula units, whatever. Molar mass is typically going to be measured in grams per mole. So you could go ahead and derive an equation from this. Typically, molar mass is denoted as capital M, and you could say that your mass, so lowercase m, divided by the number of moles, n. And you should have this equation reference given in your reference sheet. That's all for today, guys. Thank you very much.